Hello and a very warm welcome to my dearest students in today's class. India and China are going to hold another round of military talks. That will be the 19th round of military talks to disengage from the LAC flashpoints. These are the many topics that we will discuss from the perspective of GS Mains Paper 2nd, from the perspective of preliminary examination, as well as from the perspective of the optional political science and international relations. As I've already introduced you to the news, just keep in mind, recently on 22nd February, India and China, for the first time since 2019, held their first in-person disengagement talks. And it is really important for us to understand under what mechanism do these talks happen. This all happens under the working mechanism for consultation as well as coordination on Indo-China or India-China border agreement management. See, this mechanism evolved from the year 2012. Here it is explicitly written that there are pending questions with respect to border engagement, as in both the sides, India and China, they have a very sketchy border. They do not mutually agree to the border or the LAC. So that is why a mechanism was installed so that until and unless a permanent agreement is reached at, peace and tranquility prevails there. See, there are three agreements on the basis of which India and China right now engage at their border dispute or with their border dispute. First is maintenance of peace and tranquility along LAC. This was signed on 7th of September 1993. Another one is confidence building measure in the military field along the LAC. This was signed in 1996 and there is a protocol on modalities for the implementation of confidence building measures. That is, whatever confidence building measures are agreed upon, that we will do this, you will do that, and hence we will agree and manage our border. How we will implement those, the protocol was signed in the year 2005. However, Rajnath Singh, the defense minister, has candidly said that all these three agreements were flouted in 2020. Since the Galwan clash, we are seeing new flashpoints occurring. See, the composition of this is including a joint secretary level official from the Ministry of External Affairs from Indian side, a director general level official from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs from Chinese side, and diplomatic and military officials are also there from the two sides. So there are two channels, diplomatic and military. Now, the frequency, how many times do they have to meet? Once to two times a year, and that would be alternatively in India and China. This is also a part of confidence building measure, and if there is any emergency consultations can also be there. Now let's talk about the line of actual control. See, the line of control with Pakistan, that is perfectly delineated on the map. So there are no proper disputes, as in Pakistan just uses its terrorists as strategic assets for India to wage war against India. But still, we have to be sure that LOC is different in the sense, the key difference is LOC is delineated on the map, LAC is not mutually agreed upon, that is why it is not delineated on a map. LAC has a dispute. How? It, according to India, is 3488 kilometers long. India considers LAC to be 3,488 kilometers long, while China says it is just 2,000 kilometers long. So there is clearly a huge difference of perception. LAC can be divided into three parts. First is the western part that consists of Ladakh, the most volatile. This is the most volatile area of the LAC, sector of the LAC. Then we have the middle sector. Middle sector consists of Uttarakhand and Himachal Pradesh. This generally does not see that much of disruption because we have to understand it from the point of view how Ladakh, and why Ladakh is so volatile but not Uttarakhand and Himachal Pradesh. We will understand it from the perspective of when the colonial masters left India. Then we have the eastern sector, which consists of Arunachal Pradesh. Mind you, Tawang in Arunachal Pradesh is of huge significance to China, and China considers Arunachal Pradesh as a part of southern Tibet. In its map, it shows it like that. Although they did agree upon that the eastern sector coincides with the so-called McMahon line according to the letters by former Chinese Premier Zhou Enlai. So all these sectors are important for us to understand. Now you understand, you just keep in your mind that western sector is the most volatile, middle sector not so much, eastern sector is volatile when it comes to Tawang. As you see, this is the McMahon line and the eastern sector of the LAC coincides with the McMahon line. Here is the line of actual control. This is the illegally occupied territory. This is India's territory. China illegally occupied this territory in the 1962 war. So they consider this to be a part of their old territory. Moving ahead, if we talk about how do we know about LAC and how did the evolution of a line came into existence, it could be traced back to two letters that Chinese Premier Zhou Enlai wrote to our former late Prime Minister Jawaharlal Nehru. Zhou Enlai wrote to Prime Minister Jawaharlal Nehru in 1959. For the first time ever, a line was mentioned. What is this line? It was still unknown to us. He said that LAC consisted of the so-called McMahon line that I have already told you in the east, and the line up to which each side exercises actual control in the west. West means right now it's Ladakh. Second letter R, it was after the 1962 war. This interpretation of line led to the war of 1962. I will tell you that as well. The Chinese claimed that they had withdrawn to 20 km behind the LAC of November 1959. What was the point? It was still not clear. In this letter, Zhou Enlai said, to put it concretely, in the eastern sector, it coincides with the so-called McMahon line again. And in the western sector and middle sector, that means Ladakh, Uttarakhand and Himachal Pradesh, it coincides in the main with the traditional customary line which has consistently been pointed out by China. This sentence reeks of unilateralism. It was never discussed with our Prime Minister. They just considered there is a line and China is pointing out this line to you and you have to abide by it. So what is the point of withdrawing? Why are you saying that this is a line and from here to here we have withdrawn? This area now belongs to us. This area belongs to you. This is not how international relations work. So India rejected the concept of LAC both in the year 1959 and 1962. Jawaharlal Nehru ji explicitly said there is no sense or meaning in the Chinese offer to withdraw 20 kilometers from the line of actual control. He also said that in inverted commas because there was no bilateral or mutual agreement. Then what is the line of control? Is this the line they have created by continuous aggression since September? Whatever they may say, might is right according to them. By the way, the problem was that Shiv Shankar Menon in his book said that the map which they presented was a disconnected series of dots. Just dots were given. This is the line. And now this could be joined anyhow, like this or like this. So there was no mutually agreed upon bilateral perception of line. Jawaharlal Nehru ji said the line should omit gains from the aggression in 1962 and make it go back to the status quo of September 8, 1962. The basic point here is there is no such line which has been mutually agreed upon. Please make sure that the status quo prevails before the 1962 war. The line, as they say, what we have our perception of our country, it should be as of September 8. This was made very clear. Now, LAC was also discussed when Chinese Premier Li Peng came to India in 1991 and Prime Minister P.V. Narasimha Rao and Li reached a conclusion that we should maintain peace and tranquility along the LAC. India formally accepted the concept of LAC when Rao paid a return visit to Beijing in 1993, but there was a catch. LAC back then in 1993 was agreed upon by both the heads of state. This was the point, not the 1959 LAC, not the 1962 LAC, but the LAC that they mutually agreed upon in 1993. And they also established a joint working group on the border issue, and that would be taking up the task of clarifying the agreement on the LAC. But that did not last long. India did changes its stance. Why? Let's know that. China Study Group was formulated in 1976. More studies were done. And because of this, India revised many things, such as revising the patrolling limit, from where to where our army will go and from where to where our soldiers will patrol the area. Then rules of engagement, how to engage with their soldiers. Pattern of Indian presence along the border. How should we keep our border, as in we should put more infrastructure, more tanks, more soldiers. So all that was revised, and that created more frequent patrols by both the Indian and Chinese side in the mid 1980s. So it started changing because we had another thing coming. Now the Sumdorongchu standoff happened because of India granting statehood to Arunachal Pradesh. Alright, so they were very upset. In 1986, India said that Arunachal Pradesh is now a state. That did not sit well with the Chinese because Chinese considered Arunachal Pradesh a part of southern Tibet. So they put a lot of pressure on India by intruding into our borders from Arunachal Pradesh, and that was the Sumdorongchu standoff. And Sumdorongchu standoff was tackled very well by the Indian soldiers back then. Even the Prime Minister Rajiv Gandhi reached Beijing in 1988 at the backdrop of this standoff, and they negotiated that they would maintain peace and tranquility along the border. But why Ladakh is so volatile? See, after India became independent, Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel, he put out white papers on the issue. And when he published the two white papers, the first one was in July 1948, just after India became independent. And it had two maps. One map had no boundary showing in the western sector. Only a partial color wash was there, and the second one extended the color wash in yellow, and it particularly said that boundary has been unidentified. Why? Just think. When the British left India, they left almost the Jammu Kashmir region out of any sort of delineation. Why? Jammu Kashmir issue was still not settled. It was still considering itself independent, right? But because of the Pakistani aggression, it became very imminent that we safeguard our borders. So that is why when Jammu and Kashmir came under the pressure from Pakistan to sign the instrument of accession with India, the boundary still was not delineated properly, and that created problems for the western sector with China. The second white paper was published when India became a republic in 1950, and here the map again had boundaries which were undefined. See, this was the problem. So our maps did not have proper defined boundaries. All became defined after 1954, when in 1954 Prime Minister Nehru said that all our old maps should be carefully examined and withdrawn where necessary. New maps should include the region that we currently see. The current map of India, it was published back then only. That map, those maps were sent to foreign embassies of India. It was taught in schools, and after that only the 1962 war occurred because China did not accept it. So both these countries could not come out with a proper plan. Then let's talk about the current flashpoints. See, Depsang Plains are important to India. It gives us a strategic point to ensure that we do not get attacked by either China or Pakistan. We have the highest airstrip here. And what the Chinese are doing right now in Depsang Plains, they have put their tanks in such a manner that our soldiers are not able to patrol here. So this is a sticking point. Although the main flashpoint was the Galwan Valley. Here only on 15th June 2020 in the Galwan Valley, 20 soldiers, Indian soldiers died in a clash, but unnumbered soldiers from China. We do not know what is the number of the Chinese soldiers who died back then. Then another flashpoint is Pangong Tso Lake. Pangong Tso Lake, highest saltwater lake in India. And highest saltwater lake in India has been a flashpoint. Why? See, here is the Pangong Tso Lake, and here are the mountain spurs which look like fingers. So these are the 8 fingers. Indian side says that LAC is up to finger 8. but the Chinese say that LAC is up to finger 2. Now what happens? Our soldiers want to patrol till here, but the Chinese say that please patrol till here only because this region belongs to us. So that is why Pangong Tso Lake is another flashpoint. Next is, of course, between Pangong Tso Lake and Spangur Lake. South of this, we have Rechilla, Rezangla, and these are also strategically very important to India. It gives us a high altitude, a bird's eye view, we can say, of the region. And here only, for the first time in 45 years, gunshots were heard. So you see that these regions are the major flashpoints. Demchok and Depsang Plains are remaining unresolved. From other flashpoints, disengagement has been done to a level not satisfactory, but still it has been done. Certain strides have been made. India also suggested that we should have a 3-step process to ease the standoff. First is disengagement of troops. Until and unless the status quo of 2020 remains, we cannot talk further on any other issues. And second is de-escalation. Do not build up infrastructure, continuously put tanks, continuously put artillery in that area. Take it a notch down. Another point is de-induction. De-induction means, again, taking back of troops, artillery, and any offensive infrastructure that you have built up there. And as I told you, that Demchok, and I have already shown you, here we have Depsang. These two are the main sticking points. This is the illegally occupied area. So I hope you understood till now how we are working. But recently satellite images have shown that China is just words. China is just words. Why do I say this? Because before the Galwan clash, the fortification of Tibet was not this horrible. Now the Tibet fortification policy of the Xi Jinping government is showing that in Khotan, Nagari Gunsa and Lhasa, they are building helipads, airstrips, airfields, missile bases, roads and bridges. If these are not offensive infrastructure built, what are they? They are also building hardened shelters that in case of any combat with India or any other country, of course it will be with India if it ever be, so they can hide in these hardened shelters and they will be protected. Construction of new support and military operation buildings are also registered. So that is what is happening right now. India and China both have very similar frontier experiences. Both were enslaved by the colonial masters. So their history is a little similar when it comes to their frontier experience. And that is why it becomes really challenging to understand which infrastructure is offensive and which infrastructure is a deterrent or defensive. So China is constructing model villages as well. Just do not think that Ladakh only is the main flashpoint. China is not doing anything for the Arunachal Pradesh region. No, it is also building model villages over there so that the first line of defense becomes intact. And there are 4 P's whenever we are going to talk about Indo-China relations. 4 P's we have to take into consideration. First is the perception of each other. The Chinese consider India slave mines, and we consider the Chinese authoritarian. And the social media is not helping at all, just perpetuating the stereotypes that we have for each other. Quarrels are there with perimeters, the borders. 4 P's, perception, second is perimeter. Partnership. India and China both are friends with each other's enemies. Although India is friends with both USA and Russia, but China hates USA and is a friend with Russia. But you think that strategically India and China have never been partners. They never had shared interest. So that is why we see that the quartet is such: China, USA, Russia and India. It's like that. There is a growing power gap as well. The GDP of China, unfortunately, is much larger than India's. And we will take decades to reach what China has already done. So that is another problem. So security dilemma being the first, that infrastructure build up from both the sides, it is creating a lot of mistrust in for both these countries. It is really hard to differentiate between, are you building the infrastructure for your own security or you are doing it to wage war against my country? That is the problem. And this has been shown, the security dilemma has been manifested in 2013 Depsang locking horns, 2014 Chumar, 2015 Birds, 2017 Doklam, the tri-junction between India, Bhutan and China, in Galwan 2020 and in Tawang as well. China is time and again trying to show India what are its core interests by these wars. Although China may not go at a full-fledged war with India, not in the upcoming few years. But if it happens, it has already shown that Depsang, Chumar, Galwan and Tawang are its major interest. So India should ensure that India safeguards this region. If these regions ever fall into the hands of China, it will be a huge strategic setback, a huge military setback for India. And infrastructure race. Both these countries are continuously building so much infrastructure in the areas, rightly so. And because China has bullied many smaller countries, and in South China Sea, it is also making absurd claims like the Nine Dash Line was a part of the erstwhile kingdom. So all these points make it valid for India to build infrastructure over there. Similarly, China is thinking that if India is doing so, why shouldn't I? So what should India do? On the diplomatic point, China is first of all very insecure when it comes to its perception in the world. As in the international order, what countries think of China matters a lot. So India should ensure that it uses this in the sense that it sticks to the point, status quo before June 2020, 15th June 2020 should be restored. Second is we have to explore other channels as well, not only military and diplomatic, people to people contact or something, university sort of channels as well. India needs to cultivate a global coalition, global South coalition, in order to dramatize what China is doing to its smaller neighbors, such as Vietnam, such as Thailand. So all these things would work in favor of India. This was also suggested by Dr. S. Jaishankar. India should continue cooperating with China when it comes to other multilateral things, such as Ukraine war, climate change, technology. Whenever it is possible for both these countries to mutually agree upon certain things, these opportunities should not be lost. It will help a lot in confidence building measures. Militarily, we must remain alert because these incursions will continue to happen. We have to ensure that we get better intelligence, better troop connection, better communication, increasing the mobility of force which we need, better tunnels, all-weather tunnels, roads, equipping the army for prolonged mountain battles as well, because you see, even after 60 years of independence, India did not have proper mountain clothing gears. India had to get it from the USA in 2020 Galwan clash. We need that as well. And the most important is the moral of officers. Just because they are fighting for the army, just because they are in the Indian army, does not going to put their morale on an all-time high at all the time. So we need proper commanding forces in small battalions as well. And we have to understand that we do certain things to have countering measures for the Fortress Tibet policy. How? India has raised 7 more Indo-Tibetan border police battalions, launching a vibrant village scheme and clearing the Shinkun La tunnel. How will it work? Let's talk about that. Under the one border, one force policy, what is happening that India is raising certain battalions, more number of battalions, and it will ensure that the line of defense becomes stronger. If whatever occurs, we have IT, Indo-Tibetan Border Police, that is very well versed with how to fight in the mountains. Second is Indian Army, and then any other reserve forces that we have. So 56 battalions have been deployed. Also in Ladakh, it has been deployed. In Uttarakhand as well, because Chinese were able to get into Barahote as well from the perspective of middle sector. Vibrant Village scheme has been launched with an outlay of rupees 4,800 crore. When the government noticed that the youth from these villages are coming down to different cities to get employment, the first line of defense are the villages of the region. When they resist, nothing much can be done. So it is important that we provide employment opportunities to them. That is why this thing. So rupees 2,500 crore will be given into providing last mile connectivity to border villages, getting more employment. Border defense is important for both the LAC and the actual ground position line in Pakistan and Siachen Glacier. For this, we need all-weather connectivity access, which will pass from Himachal Pradesh to Ladakh via Manali, Atal Tunnel, Darcha, Shinkulna, Padum Nimu access. Why? Because this region is flanked between Zanskar on the west and Himalaya on the east. So in case of war, this region remains intact and it will provide a feeder road for the deployment of more troops in the other areas. Another point is we have to clear the 12-kilometer tunnel at Sasarla in subsector north, because in order to reach Daulat Big Oldie Road, we need a separate tunnel as well. We should not depend on only one tunnel. So all this is being done to counter China's aggression at the border. I hope this helped. Thank you so much for watching. For the PDF, Pooja Dwivedi StudyIQ UPSC, you have to search this on Telegram. Join that channel and you will get the PDF. You can talk to me on Instagram as well. Thank you so much for watching.